Good morning.
Good morning.
Physically, I'm not feeling that well. I'm getting over a cold, and if I start coughing, I just want to apologize now. And I've been thinking about this topic. I don't know, is this too? No, this is fine. And Narcotics Anonymous has taught me about the meanings of words, and the topic is carrying the message, and the means specific, not carrying a message. And I always carry a message, but sometimes it's not the message of Narcotics Anonymous. And I trust that my higher power is with me today and that I can carry the message of Narcotics Anonymous, you know, as it was given to me when I got here. And the message of Narcotics Anonymous is of hope, and it's that any addict, can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. So I'm systematic, so I'll start with the beginning, and it's about an addict. You know, step one, I researched this disease for a lot of years, and I've learned the importance of writing steps, because in my head I can justify and rationalize all kinds of crap, but when I write it down on paper, it's there in black and white. And what I learned about being an addict is that I wasn't an addict because I came from a large poor family. I wasn't an addict because I didn't fit in the right cliques in school. I wasn't an addict because I experienced abuse as a child. I wasn't an addict because I used drugs. I was an addict because I had the disease of addiction. And the symptoms of those diseases I learned was the obsession, the compulsion, and the self-centeredness. And learning how to identify that obsession. You know, when I was using at work, it was all about, gonna get out of work, hope everybody's there, all night, that's all I can think about is getting out of work, because I'm gonna go party, and that was that constant stream of thoughts, all the time, about getting high and using. And then the compulsion was, once I picked up, there was no stopping, and I tried different ways. I tried just getting a little bit, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more till the money was gone. Then I tried, let's just spend all the money at once, you know, and it didn't matter how I did it. When it was gone, it was just never enough. That, you know, I didn't go home until there was no hope left of any more. Hanging on for hours just for one more, you know. And it would take a long time sometimes to give up that there wasn't going to be no more tonight. And then the self-centeredness was, you know, I had a husband and kids at home. And, you know, I couldn't understand why my husband was so upset. He's in bed sleeping. You know, I thought he was so selfish to be upset with me for being out all night. And you know what? It's my money. I earned it. So what if I spend it on something that I enjoy? And so that's what I learned, was that self-centered part of my disease. That always thinking everything's about me. I run into you and you're having a bad day, it's about me. You know, and just focusing everything about myself, you know. And so I was able to get with, after the end of the first step, that I am an addict. I have the disease of addiction. And you know what? It's going to get progressively worse, whether I use or don't use, you know, and that I could make a decision about what to do. Well, the next part of our message is any addict. And what I had to get with is that I was not unique. That I was just like the other addicts in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. That, you know what, the drugs I used didn't make me different, the family I came from didn't make me different, the job I worked didn't make me different, being married didn't make me different, being white didn't make me different, being my age, nothing made me different. That I suffered this disease of addiction. I qualified as not only a addict, but any addict. And you know, that was one of the very helpful things in my recovery, is when I was able to lose that uniqueness. And my favorite joke has always been, how do you catch a relapse? You sneak up on it. And I stick with that. And it helps me to learn from all of you, because I have to remember that we're all just any addict. And then stop using drugs. Now that was a hard one. And I went into a treatment center, and I was a whining little crybaby. And one of the favorite addicts in my life today is the addict that worked in that detox. Well, I didn't know that at that time. And I was just whining and pitching a fit. And you know what he told me? There's a door. He didn't say, oh, please stay, we need you, you'll get better. He said, there's a door. You think it's so bad in here and so great out there? Go. Well, you know, I did think it was bad in there, but I knew how bad it was out there. And I don't know if it was stubbornness, ego, pride, pain, but I stayed. You know, he tells me today that because I came in on a Wednesday, and when he went home for the weekend, he thought for sure I wouldn't be there Monday morning. You know, because I was just pitching a fit about everything. And he says, you know what, when he saw me there Monday morning, he thought maybe I just might make it, you know. And he never cut me no slack the whole time I was there. But anyway, so I end up in meetings, and I want to use really, really bad, you know. And I'm grateful that I found the meetings, because I was told that just for today I never had to use again. And of course in that my mind it meant, you mean I never can use again? You know, and being able to get in touch with, no, Bonnie, we're not saying you can never use again. We're saying just for today, you don't have to use. You don't have to live like that anymore if you don't want to. Nobody's making you stay, but this is a choice we're offering you. And they gave me phone numbers. And when the pain was great enough, I finally picked up that phone, and it took time. And I think the connection for me with using the phone was someone finally telling me how self-centered it was not to use the phone, because I might just be helping that other person. And I still couldn't do things for me, but I could do that for you. Okay, if I call you, I'm helping you. You know, I could get with that, and it gave me some courage to pick up the phone. And then, you know, I really, really wanted to use. And I'm going to meetings, and I finally got in touch with a sponsor, and you know, I was afraid to tell anybody. I was afraid that you would think I was a failure. I was the one exception that Narcotics Anonymous wasn't going to work for. So I'm not going to tell you how badly I want to use. And I finally broke down one day, and I told my sponsor, I'm like, why isn't this working? I still want to use. She's like, honey, you're an addict. That's what we do. We want to use, you know. But I didn't use, no matter what. No matter what was happening, you gave me a tool that I could choose instead. You would say, you know, if you want to use, call me first. And then if you still want to go use. Nobody ever took that from me. And so I was able to stop using, you know. And, you know, I was around so many people that told me that everybody relapsed. And I thought that everybody did. And I was grateful when I got with people who told me, no, everybody doesn't. You have that choice. And, you know, then came the lose the desire to use. You know, well, stop using too had a lot to do with second step, even though I wasn't there yet. But learning about, you know, hope that I could be restored to sanity. And using was insanity in my life, you know. And so that was a lot about that second step, coming to believe that I could stop using, that I could have life be different. I wasn't sure about better yet. It just could be different. And then losing the desire to use, for me, is a lot of that third step. And it was losing the desire to not live like that anymore, losing the desire to be in pain all the time, you know. And it helped when it was lifted, where it wasn't about drugs anymore, but it needed to be about more than that for me. Because I know today my addiction isn't just about drugs, that I could stop using and still be in pain and still be sick and still want to die. And so it was about losing the desire to all that too. And then finding a new way to live. And for me, that was a lot of third step too, that I was going to learn about turning a will and a life over. That my will wasn't working for me at all. And that I could find this loving, caring, higher power that was going to love me unconditionally, and try that will instead. And then began the journey of finding a new way to live. And the journey had to start from the beginning. And I remember when my sponsor in 4-Step wanted me to write this life story. Start with the earliest thing you remember, just write everything. I thought, it's going to take forever, you know. And it didn't take forever. It took some time. It took some diligence. It took some sitting down and doing it when I didn't want to do it. Sitting down and writing about things that I didn't feel when they happened, so I'm feeling them right now. And then picking up the phone when I put down the pen for that day and talking to somebody about making cookies, because I had to get out of that space. But it enabled me to journey on to the rest of the steps and find my part in my life. You know, I was such a victim to everybody else. Everybody else was responsible for the pain in my life. And I couldn't get into a solution till I could accept the problem that it was me. And once I could accept the problem that it was me, and what I learned in step 6 was fear. I lived a life ruled by fear. You know what? The drugs controlled me, the fear controlled me. I could not make decisions on my own. And then being able to make the decision that I was going to let that go, that I didn't want to live a life that was going to be ruled by fear anymore. And I still have fear in my life today, but my life isn't ruled by that fear. And so anyways, progressing through the steps, and then once I could find my part in situations, then I was ready to make some amends for my past, because I no longer was your victim. Regardless of what you did to me, I wronged you. And I need forgiveness from myself for that, whether you forgive me or not. And the only way I'm going to get that is to admit my part in what I did. And that I'm always going to, I'm human and I'm going to hurt people. But I'm going to try not to hurt people like that anymore. I'm not going to go back into that pain anymore. And then step 10, I learned that how I'm feeling and how I'm doing is two totally different things, and I need to be checking them, because part of the disease of addiction is my feelings get screwy, and that I have to really look at the facts. And I can't base my decisions on my feelings all the time, because my feelings can exaggerate, it can minimize, but I really have to look at the facts of the situation, and I need to talk to somebody about how I'm feeling, because sometimes my feelings are so strong that they cloud those facts. And I need someone else's perspective to guide me in finding those facts. Me and my husband, I ran into this girl that I used to run with years ago, and we moved, and I knew she lived in that neighborhood. And I was really torn about what I was going to do here. So I'm talking to my husband about it, and he's like, I don't know why you're talking to me. It sounds like you've made up your mind. And I said, well, my decision is based on feelings. I'm hoping you can help me find the facts here so that I can make a decision based on the facts. And and that's what he helped me do. And part of it was, before the bitter ends, I had cut her off because she didn't understand, and she was concerned about my use. And, I had already cut her off once, and he's like, how fair? Because I said, would I be able to, if it's not going to be healthy, to terminate, to back away? And he says, well, why would you want to do that to her again, to begin with? Well, as it turns out, and talking to enough people and looking at the facts and where I'm at in my recovery, I felt well enough that I could go see her. And she had quit drinking for 2 years. And again, this is self-centered part of my disease. I'm worried about, what is this going to do to me? She had quit drinking 2 years ago, and she did it on her own. And part of her doing it was totally isolating from everybody she knew. And she needed a healthy friend. And I never once thought about me running into her was maybe about God helping her. It was all about me again. And another symptom of that disease. Still got it. So anyway, so step 10 helps me keep in touch with that every day. And step 11 is one of my favorites. 7 and 11 are my favorite steps. Because 7, I began to love me. And 11, I began to really feel the unconditional love of a higher power. And step 11, it says on the last page, and it works how and why. And I'm not much of one for memorizing, the basic text, but I memorize this because I love it. And it says, we've begun to see that our higher power's will for us is to live with dignity, to love ourselves and others, to laugh, to find beauty in all our surroundings. And that's all it was. I thought that I was supposed to practice these spiritual principles to manipulate this higher power into giving me a good life. And I learned it wasn't about that. I practice these spiritual principles because I feel good when I do that. I feel good when I tell the truth. I feel good when I pay for something and not steal it. I feel good when I honestly ask you for help rather than manipulating it out of you. And that's why I practice these principles. And you know what? That higher power is going to love me no matter what, And then in step 12, it talks about having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. You know what my spiritual awakening was? I had found a new way to live. I wasn't living like that anymore. I felt good about who I was. You know what? I learned that what dignity meant is that I could set my own standards and be true to myself and live in my skin. I didn't have to be guided by your standards or society's, but my own, and be true to myself and who I am and what's okay with me. And that's what living with dignity is about. That you don't get to measure my dignity and I don't get to measure yours. That's between me and my higher power, you know. And sometimes what's okay today is not okay tomorrow, and I learned that. That's part of the growing. And I had found this new way to live. And then it says to carry this message. And to me, the message again is hope. That I hope that the message I carry is that you don't got to live like that anymore. You know, and if it worked for me, it'll work for anybody. And that I am any addict, and, you know, if you're an addict, you're any addict. You don't get to just be an addict without being any addict. It goes hand in hand. And that this happens through the steps, you know, that this spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, you know. And to practice these principles in all my affairs, that recovery just doesn't happen out here at Camp Mac this weekend. It happens in my home, it happens in my job, it happens in the grocery store. You know, when I'm out here and I flick a cigarette butt on the ground, I'm carrying a message. When I cut somebody off in traffic, I'm carrying a message. If you call me on the phone and you're in pain, but I'm watching TV and I can't tell, I carry a message, you know. And it's not always the Narcotics Anonymous message. When I'm in meetings, I get upset because, you know, I want to talk about solutions. And whenever somebody like the topic fear, okay, I want to talk about overcoming fear. I want to talk about courage. Somebody talks about resentments. I want to talk about forgiveness, you know, because I want to talk about the solutions. I know what fear is. I know what resentments are. I know what those things are. I want to talk about what you're doing to feel better, to get into the solution and not live in that problem and that pain anymore. And sometimes it's hard for me because somebody will say, resentments, how about dealing with resentments? How about fear? How about courage? And, you know, I'm getting better about allowing it to be where it's at. But that to me is, the message is solution. You know, that's what it is for me about the solution. And the promise is freedom. And the freedom I have today, you know, the biggest freedom I have today is that I can be myself. And most of the time, some of the time, I can let you be yourself. And that's the freedom that I have today. And it's okay. And, you know, I also kind of did a little reading, and I want to talk a little bit just for a second about the fifth tradition. And, you know, our message is so important that it's our primary purpose. That's the purpose I have in my life today, is to carry the message of Narcotics Anonymous. So you know what? An addict like me doesn't need to die. That maybe they can find hope in this new way to live. And it says in Tradition 5 that, you know, the newcomer is important to us because I can only keep what I have if I'm giving it away. But you know, the message in a meeting is for any suffering addict, and that can be any one of us in the meeting. There are times when I am there and I need to hear a message of hope. I need to know that where I'm at is okay and that things will change and get different. And, you know, that it's important for me to remember that everyone in a meeting needs the message. And it's not just the newcomer. And through us giving that hope to one another, the newcomer will hear the message. And I love Narcotics Anonymous, you know. And I remember one time somebody told me this person was a Nazi, and I didn't know that was a bad thing. I said, well, you're an NA Nazi. They said, I am not, I'm a purist. You know, and I don't like to think that I'm a Nazi or a purist, because one of the things that I learned, because, you know, I've read the books, and I got this picture in my mind of what Narcotics Anonymous should be. You know, my home group wasn't like that. But I was going to go there, and they were going to be like that, because I was going to make them be like that. And that didn't work, because I had someone dear to me call me up and say, you know, I'm leaving that home group, because it's Bonnie's group now. And that really hurt, and I really wanted to run, because it just gave me a dose of humility that when I carry the message, it's not about telling you how to live. It's about showing you how I live. And then if you want that, then that's what you'll do. Not everybody wants it. It's hard, like especially sponsoring, because they're in so much pain, and I just want to shake them and beat them. But you know what? I can't. Everybody is entitled to their own pain, and that's the hardest thing sometimes, to leave somebody where they're at. You know, I remember when I had to put a dog to sleep, and I learned, you know, because we do judge each other, you know. I have to. That's how I can set boundaries where I'm safe, you know. I try not to publicly defame you and judge you anymore, but, you know, I do have to make an assessment, because, you know what, I am what I run with. And I want to be a healthy, recovering addict today. And the truth is, not everybody here is here to get healthy and recovering. And if I want to be healthy and recovering, I have to surround myself with people like that. Like when gossip no longer became okay, I had to quit running with people who gossip. You know, when flirting and sex seeking and being with the men was no longer okay, I had to quit running with women who did that. You know, so I think I just totally lost where I was going with this. Okay, maybe it was a moot point because it's gone. But I have learned that here I do have to find the winners. I want to be a winner, but you know what? No one puts a list of the winners on the wall. That's again part of my dignity, you know, part of how I want to be, you know. And I love that none of you take that away from me. I'm allowed to be whoever I want to be. And it's always nervous coming up here and speaking. I thought I would get better because, you know, I spoke a few times now, but I still want you to like me. I still want to impress you. I still have some of that crap going on. But when I look at the facts, I love who I am today, and I'm okay with it. And you know what? I don't like everybody, and not everybody's going to like me. And if everybody liked me, then I'd have to like everybody, and that wouldn't be no fun, you know? So, anyways, I feel like I'm rambling now. And I want to apologize now if I start coughing and I leave the room, you know, because I do believe that, you know, and this is how Bonnie lives. Like in a meeting, if I pick a topic, then I need to sit through that whole meeting and hear what everybody has to say, because the message is from God. And that's what 12th tradition teaches me, you know, the message is from God. And regardless of how I feel about you or assess your recovery, you are not useless to me. You're either going to teach me how I want to be, how I don't want to be. And you know what? If I can hear your mistakes and believe that I'm any addict, you know what? I don't have to make your mistakes. I can make enough of my own. If I can lose that, you know. I've heard enough addicts come into a meeting and pick up a white key tag after they quit coming to meetings that, you know what? I'm not going to quit coming to meetings. At least not today, I'm not, you know. And I've heard enough addicts share about what doesn't work. Suggestions aren't rules. Suggestions are something somebody made up because they're a good idea. Suggestions are proven things that have worked. Yes, maybe sometimes two newcomers can get in a relationship and live happily ever after. But most of the time, it ends up sick and somebody dies. And that's why it's a suggestion, you know. I don't know, maybe there's an addict out there that quit going to meetings, quit being an addict, and can use successfully today. I haven't met him yet. So that's why it's suggested that we continue our recovery. You know, so these things aren't somebody made up. You know, a lot of people died so I could be here today. And a lot of people lived so I could be here today. So, anyways, thank you all for letting me share and helping me recover.
The next speaker this morning is Jean J.
I have to believe that my... Whoa, nice floor.
Softened it up for you.
I have to believe that my friend brought this up here for me, because I can't stand that long. I'm an addict. My name is Gene.
Hi, Gene.
I was asked to do this morning at 8:45. No, actually, which was 15 minutes more than I like to know what a workshop is about. I heard about this at 8:45. I was able to hear everything you say, and I'm glad that I was. But I'm doing a workshop next week in Minocqua, and then one the week after at Show Me Regional. And both times when they called and asked me if I do it, they started to tell me the topic or choices. I said, I don't want to know. I says, I have 18 years clean, and after 18 years, you should have a pretty good idea about how you feel about just about anything. And if you don't, you're doing something wrong. You're either not listening, you're not doing something. And so I don't like to hear what workshop topics are about, because in spite of the fact that I've been an active part of this fellowship for 18 years, I have not been able to find the switch yet. It goes all the time. When I was finally able to turn off the mind, where I was able to turn it off with is that whenever I hear about carrying the message, to me it does have a lot to do with carrying a message, because unfortunately that, for many people, is the message. But then I started thinking, and this is as I was walking down the walk, the number one way that I carry the message is not exactly the message that Narcotics Anonymous is talking about. I've been fortunate. A little bit about where I was, and I remember the first time that I heard a speaker, and what they had said was, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the past. And what went through my head immediately was, then what are you going to talk about? Because when I came into this fellowship, I was one of those people that stayed out there a long time. And I was out there doing the research for 30 years, and started when I was 9. Well, I actually started when I was 7. By the time I was 9, I was using daily, and so I got clean when I was 38, which is a pretty advanced time to get clean, particularly in a fellowship that is starting to get older. And believe me, I appreciate that. But back then was relatively young. I was the oldest member in my area by far. I mean, my sponsor was 17 years younger than I was. But during that 30 years, I managed to cram in about 60 years worth of living and about 72 years worth of using. And managed to go to prison 5 times. And was about ready to go back for my 6th time when my parole officer offered me an alternative to the revocation. During that 30 years, I had used about any drug that was imaginable, and some that weren't imaginable. I literally out on the streets, not in jail, but out on the streets, got into drinking, rubbing alcohol in lemonade, and bay rum, which is an aftershave, in lemonade. I did nutmeg. I did everything. If you told me you could get high with it, I did it. I did the nasal spray cottons. This is on the streets. I'm not talking about I did this in jail. Everybody does those things in jail. Because I spent 30 years looking for the high. And so when I got clean, I was 38 years old. I had 2 associate college degrees and 2 college degrees, 2 bachelor's degrees, and I was a couple credits short of getting 2 more bachelor's degrees. And couldn't have, on my best day, told you what any of those degrees related to. None of them. I had no idea, couldn't remember the classes, nothing. I haven't done it for years because it got depressing. If I was to look at a transcript of what I took in college and the grades I got, I was in shock. The economic balance of third world versus whatever. I had no idea. I was fortunate, and this was the first thing that I could identify when I got clean, was people back then used to say a lot, I'm glad that I'm alive, and I couldn't understand that. And the first thing that I was able to say is, I'm glad that I'm able to remember I can write my name, remember where I live, can count, because I was shocked that I was able to do that. So I got clean, and I'm sitting here and didn't know what to do, and the treatment center that I went through asked me to come and be I was painting. I had owned a painting business, so I was making a lot of money, and they asked me to come and work there. And I laughed at them and told them, you're crazy, why would I take the cut and pay? And I talked to my sponsor, and he said, think about it. Well, they asked me again. I worked there 3 years. I worked with adolescents 3 years. I'll never do it again. Nothing personal. Kids are crazy. I wanted to kill every one of them. And I left that job, and I quit. It was the only job in recovery I've ever quit. Well, I've only had 3. And one day, I got a call on the phone from some guy and says, do you want to come in to our place and interview for a job? And I thought it was a resume I'd sent out. The place that I had quit with the adolescents, I quit the first week in April. The second week of August, I was getting my last check. I had that much overtime, that much comp time, that much vacation time. We were getting about a week before that time was up, and I got a call on the phone from some guy, and I thought it was a resume I had sent out. I'd never heard of this place. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I said, sure, and I went in there, and when I got in here, I found out I'd never applied at this place. So we're doing this interview. Come to find out, this place is, talk about typecasting, it's ex-convicts in recovery. It's a 3-month program for drug and alcohol ex-convicts. And it's like they made it for me. The program was 5 months old, which was right around it started right around the time I quit the other job. And so they were doing this interview, and the guy says, well, why should we hire you for this job? And I said, well, I didn't know that I'd ask you to. But if I was a lot smarter ass back then, but I was a lot younger then. I said, but because it's got my 2 best things, being an addict and being a convict. And that's where I carry the message today. And believe me, it is not the Narcotics Anonymous message, because they're not ready for the Narcotics Anonymous message. They still have to believe that anything can be different than it was. And for the last 11 years, 12 years in August, I have been able to, on a daily basis, go into this job and say, in my actions, in my deeds, and in my words, I was in prison 5 times. I was out there for 30 years. I was shot, stabbed, done this, done that. Don't even tell me what you've done, because I've done it. I've done that 10 times and 14 other things you didn't have time to do. So do not tell me that you cannot do something differently. You know, and it's gotten to the point where we'll get a new guy in there, and he'll ask me if he can do something, and I or some other staff member will say no, and they'll go, you just don't understand. And 2 or 3 other guys will go, you have no idea who you're talking to. I was in the prison system in Wisconsin when they did the silent system, when you walked in lines. I was in prison before you could wear your hair long, before you had radios and TVs and hot water and all this. So they cannot, and this, for any addict, for me, I had to see something different. See, when I went into treatment 18 years before, it was my parole officer coming up to me. This is the same guy who had revoked me on more than one occasion, coming up to that jail cell and saying, I'm going to offer you an alternative to revocation. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had no idea that anything like NA existed. I'd never heard of it. I barely heard of AA, and AA referred it to drunk people who were in gutters. So it had no relation to the fact that I drank the quantity that I drank every day, because I didn't drink in gutters. So obviously, I didn't belong there. I'd never heard of NA, and the only reason that I ended up going was because it was a shorter jail term. Treatment back then was 27 days, and I was pacing 5 to 9 years just on my old time if they didn't give me new time. So it's like, oh, where should I go? Let me think. Okay. And so I went into treatment. When I was in treatment, I was in there 27 days. They offered me a halfway house. I was in the halfway house for 100 days. And I can honestly tell you, I don't believe that any one time during that 127 days did I say, I'm glad that I'm not using. I never want to use again. What I can tell you, without a doubt, is every day, the decision wasn't whether I was going to use. The decision was whether I had the energy to use. I was tired. I was just plain worn out. So all he did, Narcotics Anonymous taught me the message. All he did was get my ass in a different environment. All he did was show me that there in fact was something different. It slowed my ass down long enough for me to figure out that, well, maybe. Then after 9 months, I still didn't have the energy to use, but in addition to that, I had a desire not to use. Now the difference between the two was like this much to this much, but it was there. It was the fellowship that gave me the message. All I'm doing with these guys is cutting off their excuses. And I can't cut them all off. Which is the next thing I want to talk about in relation to the message. And one of the things that I've always felt that we as a fellowship don't do. And that's the fact that none of us are unique. I have a plaque, this acrylic frame thing over at the merchandise. And what it says is, you're not unique, but you are special. Okay? And the fact of the matter is that everybody in this room is special. And what makes them special is who they are, where they were, and how they got clean. And I don't believe we talk about that enough. I have friends that I know very well. I'm fortunate. I get to travel all over the world on a regular basis. And I know people all over the place, and I get to spend a lot of time with them, so I hear things that people don't normally hear. But I have friends, for example, I have a friend up in the UP who got clean shortly before I did. But she got clean, she was 15 years old. She's got 19 years. She's got more time clean than she used. Unfortunately, before I'll have more time clean than I used, I got to make it another 13 or 14 years. So it's not looking good right now. I have hopes, but I don't know. But the thing that she doesn't talk about is the fact that she was 15 when she got clean. You know, and when Bonnie was up here talking about the fact that she got clean and she was married with kids. Now, I've never been to a meeting with Bonnie. I don't know. But we don't talk about these things. We don't talk about the diseases that we've got. You know, it amazes me the way I walk around, you know, the limping and the pain across my face. It amazes me that there's still friends that do not know that I have a back injury that's severe enough that I am not, for the last 8 years I've been told I shouldn't be able to walk. It amazes me that friends of mine don't know that. How could anybody who just sees me not know that? There are people who are attempting to deal with the uses of medication in recovery. But the people who are doing it aren't talking about it. And you sit in a room and you go, you know, well, yeah, the doctor put me on this medication and this medication, and I don't like it, and I struggle with this and I struggle with this, and you get three people going, well, I am too, or I'm taking this, or I'm taking, because we don't talk about these things. And so, carrying the message of Narcotics Anonymous is not only the message, it's where you came from to get that message and what you go through to continue carrying that message. We don't talk about the economic things we go through. We don't talk about our relationships because it's not what? It's not about recovery. I beg to differ. You know, people get bothered when I'm in a meeting. My number one thing that I talk about, number one thing, is my road rage. I have been talking. No, it's No, I'm not talking about road rage like I get angry. I'm talking about road rage if I had a gun, I'd kill. I would kill. I have visions of guns in my truck. And I have visions of running people off the road. That's road rage. It's not road rage to give somebody the finger. Well, it's kind of. But we don't talk about that because it's not recovery. Yeah, it is. I got 18 years clean and I want to kill. I don't want to kill anybody in my job. I don't want to kill any of my neighbors. I don't want to kill any of my friends. I want to kill people I don't know who have just as much right to the road as I do. This is what amazes me. Absolutely amazes me. 18 years clean, and I'm pissed at somebody that's only doing 78 miles an hour. And I'll get by them, and I'll look at my speedometer, which is not a good time to look at it, by the way. But I'll look at my speedometer and I'm going 83 miles an hour, and I'm getting pissed at the guy going 78. The speed limit's 55. So, not only am I carrying the message there if I got bumper stickers on my car that said NA, but I'm not carrying a message if I'm not taking it to meetings. Because this is life. And life doesn't go on without recovery. But recovery doesn't go on if you don't learn how to deal with life. I used to get so angry that people would come to meetings. In fact, I left my home group for a number of years. It was my home group for 10 years. And I left it. The main reason I left it is because I got tired of going every week and having somebody, I was going to say another word, but I won't, of having individuals. And it wasn't the same one, because then I could have put it on them and talked about them. But people coming there and going, I really didn't know if I wanted to be at a meeting today, and I wanted to say to them, well, then get the fuck out. But you can't say that. And that's where they're at. And so my meeting is in the inner city of Milwaukee now, because it's a life and death thing, and to me it's life and death. It's life and death. And you know what? Not only do I believe that if I picked up today, I would be right back where I was, which in and of itself is scary enough, but what's doubly scary is that I'm 18 years older now. And the things that I did back then, this body wouldn't handle. I'd go out there thinking that I'm the same person I was, and I'd be dead. Like dead quick. But I didn't need to hear that. It's life and death for me. It's life and death. And that's why I do what I do. So I quit going to my home group. And I now go to the inner city. And there's other reasons that I did it, but when I was in this home group, I used to get angry because you get guys who would come every week and they'd talk about the dog, or their wife, or their husband, or the car that kept breaking down. And I'd get angry. This isn't about recovery. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. People have used over that shit. People have used over that. And for years, I just turned them off. And bottom line is somebody's talking about their dog every week after week after week. Either one of two things are coming on. Either it's real serious shit and they could use over it, or they ain't got a life. And my carrying the message is to help them get a life. For whatever reason. So I think we need to start talking about it. I do. I talk about all my stuff all the time. I talk about it with whoever will stand there for 2 minutes. 10 seconds. Give me 10 seconds. You're going to hear it. I will go on and on and on. I will tell you about the things I'm proud of. I talk about my truck all the time. All the time. And if you don't want to hear it, then leave. I happen to love my truck. I'll tell you about my camper. I'll tell you about my apartment. I'll tell you about my coffee mugs. I'll tell you about everything. I'll tell you about what drugs the doctors got me on that I keep. Somebody pointed out to me the other day you better not start using, because if you do, you're in big trouble. I got bottles of pills in my drawer because I didn't want to tell the doctor I wasn't taking them. So every month I get a new prescription and I put them in a bottle. And so I've got like 4 years of amitriptyline in my drawer. I got thousands of milligrams of this stuff. I got to throw it out. They says, if you ever decided to commit suicide, you're done. But I'll talk about everything because it is my recovery and how I deal with these things, and the fact that, you know, when I talk about what I have, if you choose to believe that I'm bragging, that's your business. What I'm doing is I'm verbalizing my pride in where I've come from. It ain't about me got more than you, because I don't know. I don't give you a chance to talk. So how would I possibly know if I got more than you? I got clean when I went in, literally when I went into the halfway house, I had 2 pair of pants. By the time I left, I only had 1 because I needed a pair of shorts. It was summer and I didn't have any shorts. So I cut one of the pair of jeans. I had like 4 pair of socks, 4 pair of underwear, 1 pair of tennis shoes, and 5 t-shirts. 1 dark blue, 1 dark green, 3 black. That was it. That was it. And in 18 years, I've accumulated what I had. I won't tell you now, but if you give me 10 minutes later, I'll fill you in. I've been all over the world. I've been to France, Colombia, Tokyo, Germany, Britain, all over the United States. This is my message. So when the guys in the house tell me, well, nobody will hire me, or I'm this old, or, you know, I can't get this, or I can't get this, or what's the use? You know, it's not that my life is going to parallel theirs. That ain't the point. The point is that I was going in the same direction. My message is, I was going the same direction, and somebody helped me to stop. That's all my message to them has to be. Now I've got the books there, and I'll point them out to them. The t-shirts you see me with at conventions, that's what you see me with at work. I wear a different one every day. In fact, the people that are in the corporate office will stop me in the hallway to read them. Because they're always different. You know, so they know where I go, they know where I choose to get my recovery, but recovery is their business. And carrying the message is the meetings. Because if I carry the message of Narcotics Anonymous in that house, then I have to carry other messages as well. I have to carry the message of AA. I have to carry the message of CA. I have to carry the message of SOS. I have to carry the message of rational recovery. I ain't doing it. I'm not going to do it. I don't know the message well enough, first of all, and I do it disservice. And second of all, it's going to blur my own recovery, and I ain't going there. And so I choose not to do it. That's what we got meetings for. So we got a meeting list up on the wall. The message that I'm carrying to them is that they don't need to do what they're doing. And the meetings will carry it from there. So that's what I do. I would hope that other people do it. You know, I'm looking at some younger people in the audience. We have lots of growth areas in the fellowship, possibilities in the fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, and one of them is the elderly, and the other one is youth. And I might have a wonderful message, but it ain't going too goddamn far in a high school. It just ain't. I'm 55 years old. Who's this old sucker, and what does he know? That's one of the things that drove me crazy about kids. Is because you could show an adolescent somebody whose life exactly paralleled their own. I mean, exactly. It could be the day they were born, the day they started using, the day. You can do all of this. This person can be 10 years older and say what was going to happen the next 10 years, and they look at them and go, but that's you. But that's you. You know, and it's like, oh yeah.
But if somebody's younger and goes into high school and talks, it's different. It's a different message, and we need to get these messages out. Going back to what I said, because I believe this. None of us is unique, but we're all special, and we all have special circumstances prior to coming in here and after we got in here. You know, and we go on, but we don't talk about them. We just don't talk about, well, that don't belong to me. Well, you don't have to talk about a meeting. Talk about them when you go out to coffee. I assume people in Indiana go out to coffee after meetings. In my home group, there's like 12 of us that go out to breakfast, and they have this like table set for us, and which is really nice until you consider that it's in a room all by itself. The door is only open when we're there. I don't know if it's got anything to do with that. The thing I'm going to close with is there are all kinds of ways to carry the message. You can do it in meetings. You can do it in coffee shops. You can do it in service work. PI is carrying the message big time. H&I is tremendous carrying the message. Tremendous. Because you're dealing with a clientele that does not want to hear it because they don't believe it. Well, I choose to carry the message with what I do. I carry books and merchandise all over the country. And because I've been able to do this for a long period of time, I've been able to do some really neat things. I've taken the first white book to Nebraska. I took the first Just for Today to Kansas. I mean, this is like fun stuff, you know, and that is carrying the message, because the message is in the literature, and I'm taking it to people who don't know that it exists. Literally. Quick story: the intro guide. I don't know. I'm assuming most of you in Indiana, 'cause Indiana's relatively civilized in relation to Narcotics Anonymous compared to some of the places out west where you go literally hundreds of miles and hope that the meeting's going on. But I go out there every year. The intro guy's been here since the 80s. And I go out there every year and somebody will walk up to the table and go, "Oh, did they just write this?" Because they don't see that out there. They don't see that. When you're talking about other countries, as far as a majority of people in the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, our literature consists of the Step Working Guide, the Just for Today, basic text, the It Works How and Why, the IPs, the key tags, the medallions. They don't know about booklets. They don't know about large IPs because most places can't afford that stuff. And the only person that sees it is the literature person who happens to see an order form from WSO. You know, they don't know about things like gift editions and things like this. So my taking it, I'm carrying the message, whether you choose to believe it or not. And I sell merchandise. To many people, to Rockford, it's trinkets. To Rockford, it's trinkets. It's not when you're selling a Narcotics Anonymous coffee mug to somebody that wants to take it to work when they've never told the people they work with that they're in recovery. Or wants to put a Just for Today plaque on their desk. Or an It Works blanket on their couch. Or they're buying their first t-shirt. We carry the message in numerous ways. We carry the message with the clothes many of us choose to wear. We carry the message when we put decals on our car. It's carrying a message, but it's carrying the message as far as other people are concerned. We're giving a message, but to them, it's the message. It is the message. Oh, that Narcotics Anonymous. You know, I was carrying the message in an elevator in New Orleans 16 years ago when me and another addict walked in an elevator and a family was there. And when we first started out, this little kid was pointing at our t-shirts and go, "What does that say? What does that say?" And we said it and Mom goes, "What is that?" And I just got tired of trying to explain what NA is. And the same way I've done it all my life. Do you know what AA is? Oh yeah? AA with drugs. Oh, and Dad is backing up into the corner.
Yeah.
Dad, the kid, was checking out the jewelry and the T-shirts, and he wants to jump up in our lap, and well, I mean, we're standing. And Mom was okay. Dad was freaking. Carrying the message was by the time we got to the 17th floor, he was shaking our hand. That's carrying the message. Carrying the message is whatever you choose to make it, but make it a complete message. You know, whatever you're dealing with, whatever you've dealt with, talk about it. And if people tell you that ain't about recovery, then tell them you're denying my existence, because it's about mine. It's about mine. So if you want to talk about your dog, and somebody tells you it ain't about recovery, well, tell me if it's about recovery if I go out and use and die. It's a whole message. Our text tells us what the message is, but every part of the message is made out of individual messages. And we have, in this room, right now, you put all the experiences together and all the things you do on a daily basis. I believe that for every one of those things, there's somebody else in this room that's either struggled with it or is ignoring it. And making believe that it doesn't exist because they believe that. We keep telling ourselves we're not unique and believe we're unique. So, choose to carry the message any way you want, carry it. Carry it, vocalize it, beat people on the head with it. Do whatever. You know. Thanks.
My name's Jeff, I'm still an addict. We have about 25 minutes for after comments on speakers or on the topic of carrying the message. Before I open the floor, I need to remind everybody that they are being taped. If you wish not to be taped, let me or the tape person know so that it can be turned off. So the floor is open for discussion. Anybody? Talkative group this morning. Close with a. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay.
My name is Ed, and I'm an addict. Now you don't really have a lot to say off the tip of my head, but silence in a meeting is usually a sign to talk. So what the heck? Yeah. This is my son. This is his first convention/retreat. And actually, my relationship with him shows a lot about recovery. About a year and a half ago, I had over 13 years clean. I was making one meeting a week and didn't have a sponsor. And my house was in foreclosure. I couldn't pay my bills. I luckily had one friend in NA who started calling me on a regular basis. But I'll tell you, at that point, I felt friendless, hopeless, helpless. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with this guy and a few other of my sons, which I will say in a period of time they were joyous experiences, their births, and usually sometimes their life. Felt like I couldn't breathe, my heart was pounding, and I was having what was called a panic attack. Felt like I was going to have a nervous breakdown. That's what actually, words come out of my mouth. I feel like I'm having a nervous breakdown. And these words were words that I said 13 years prior, and the feelings I was having was like when I first came into the program. The realization that abstinence is not enough. You know, recovery is more than simple abstinence. And the idea of the basics that I was taught early in recovery started coming in. You know, and a friend of mine, I started talking, reminded me about something we had talked about earlier in recovery, about 3 meetings a week. So I thought, maybe I'll try another one. And that's what I did. I felt like it was like a science experiment, going to one extra meeting, one extra meeting, one extra meeting. Felt 2 meetings is better than 1, 3 meetings is better than 2, and 4 meetings is better than 3. And, you know, 5 meetings is better than 4, and so on. You know, go to a convention, hell, 20 meetings in a week is better than 19. You know, having the time to make 20 meetings a week for myself in a very busy life. But I make 4 in my schedule. I got a sponsor. Picked up that step working guide. Started working the steps. Started reapplying these 12, you know, steps, these principles in my life again. And things started getting better. Now, I didn't become rich. Somebody just didn't hand me a bunch of money. You know, I ended up filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which stopped my house from being foreclosed upon. And this miracle started happening when I stopped putting work first, family second, recovery third, and put recovery first, family second, work third. It's really hard. You know, the world teaches me quite a different thing. You know, it reminds me social acceptability doesn't equal recovery, and I have to remember about putting my recovery first. But in doing it, everything else seems to take care of itself. My bills are being paid, because now I not only have to make that mortgage, I'm making a Chapter 13 payment, and started in December. In November I said, I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it. You know, but it's being done. You know, this program has worked miracles in my life. And even from when I came into this program, I was a woman abuser, a drug addict. I was basically clinically insane. You know, I have papers on my insanity, you know, in the state of Illinois. Not on psychotropic medication. I'm not institutionalized. Haven't hit a woman in over 16 years. I haven't used drugs in over 15 years. This program works miracles. Early in recovery, what I needed was a personality change, and I got it. Now, 15 years in, I need a personality change, and I'm getting it. It's all about change. You know, I can't just stop, as I'd like to. You know, recovery is about change, and I am grateful for this change. I'm grateful for events like this, people like you, help me not to feel alone. So when I got those crazy thoughts going through my head, there's people that can understand me, and there's people who talk about what's going on in their life that I can understand and not feel alone. I'm grateful. This process helps me to be a more patient, loving, and caring father. And a father to 4 boys, and that's tough at times. And a better husband. And without it, you know, one of our symptoms is divorce. And I saw my relationship heading that way, and I'm grateful that at least today, I don't have that yet. But I don't know. That's it. I'm grateful to be here.
Hi, I'm Kim, and I'm an addict.
Hi, Kim.
I want to thank Bonnie and Jean for sharing. Normally, I've been coming to Camp Mac, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, and I've been clean 7 years. Usually I come here and I'm filled with a fire and a passion and this flame, and you know, I pull into the gates and it's like, you know, this spark, you know, and this year I got here and I didn't have that. And wanted to stay home and wanted to isolate. And sitting here listening to the two of them, both of them have passion. And I want it back. And I talked to a friend / sponsee last night who runs around saying she doesn't have anything to offer yet. She gave me quite a bit last night. And when they say you have to talk about it, you have to talk about it. You know, when you're sitting there thinking you don't have anything to share, that you're feeling bad. You know, when Jean said you have to share a message, share. Whether anybody believes it has anything to do with recovery or not, it's your recovery. And I guess I've spent time thinking that, I've got 7 years clean and I'm supposed to have it together, and I have to put on this show and I have to look like I'm, and I really don't care what other people think. Recovery has helped me to do that, but it's gone. And I don't like admitting that to people here. But when I listen to both of them and listen to Ed, my higher power has me where I'm supposed to be. But what have I done? I used to go to my home group faithfully once a week. I was involved with area. I was involved with the convention committee. I had the fire, I worked the steps diligently. I talked to my sponsor more than once a month. Now I go to 1 or 2 meetings a month because school's more important, work's more important, doing the laundry is more important, and it's like I was proud to come up here and talk after Ed spoke about putting your recovery first, then your family, then your job, the manager of an office that makes $1 million a year, and that's managed to come first, I'm married to another recovering addict, and a lot of times I don't want to hear what he has to say, and pick up the phone. I don't want to hear what you have to say because I already know what you have to say. I just don't want to hear it, and yesterday, people come up to me, glad you're here, good to see you. I got honest with a few people and told them I really didn't want to be here. I wanted to stay home. And that's scary to me because I love We Grow With Love. I love the people that I see here. There are people here who are family to me. And
I love you guys. I do. And I'm grateful you're here. And if you see me trying to run away from you this weekend, don't let me. Okay? Thank you.
If that enthusiasm come back next year, you just need some silly juice. Come here. That's good. Did you get some? All right.
Anybody else? Tracy.
My name's Tracy. I'm an addict.
Hey, Tracy.
And probably about 3 or 4 months into my recovery, I started going to the H&I studies. Got involved in H&I, and on top of the fact that I get to help another addict that may not hear the message or may not hear the particular message they need to get their interest enough that they'll come to the meetings, it gets me out of myself. And it's really done a lot of good for me. I've learned a lot about myself, and by doing that, it's helped me in a lot of other ways. For instance, when I get out of myself, it helps me to get over a lot of those obsessions that I've struggled with for years and years, that we all have.
that we don't know how to control. A lot of the things that I had problems with in the past, whenever I started thinking about them, whether I was thinking about wanting to do them or wanting not to do them, I'd start obsessing over these things, and it became more tempting to do them and more difficult not to. And H&I is one of those things that helps to get me out of myself and thinking more on my recovery and keep me focused on that. When I stay focused on my recovery and focused on the other good things in my life, I put less emphasis on these bad things, my character defects, and the shortcomings that come from them, and I tend to act out less on them, and these things get less and less the longer I keep doing all the other good things in my recovery. So I'd just like to encourage anyone that's still listening here, think about getting involved in H&I. You know, even if you only go and speak once a month somewhere. You know, anyone can spare an hour and a half a month to drive somewhere and go speak for H&I at a treatment center, jail, or some other institution, and give another addict the opportunity to hear the message. I'm just glad to be here and be clean. Thanks.
I'm Shannon, I'm an addict. I hate this topic. I've asked it, 6 times? Carrying the message. I always say carrying the message, not the mess. And sometimes the mess is all the message you got. Me and Bonnie, we discuss things. We see the recovery totally different some days. But I appreciate her recovery. I'm kind of like on Gene's side on what he was talking about. My sponsor always tells me if I'm going to bring up something, I better have a solution. And my rebuttal to that is, if I don't know the answer, then I need to bring it up as a topic so I can get some feedback about that. And in one way, to me, that's carrying the message, because I need to learn about something. If I have a problem with relationships, this program is built on relationships. I need to get somebody else's feedback about how they dealt with an intimate relationship, or a relationship with their sponsor, or another recovering addict, and I still can't deal with relationships. The only relationship I have right now, pretty much down pat, is my sponsor. And even that, I'm not doing enough footwork. I almost got in 3 car accidents trying to get here tonight, this weekend. I just needed to be here. This is my center. This is where I get my serenity every year. And of course, my plan was to get here at 1 o'clock, and HP's plan was to get here later. And I don't know. I need to be here. I wish I could come here every weekend. And I don't know. Kim moved me because I've been there. I've gotten to the point where, bills got so far behind. I needed to be there and pay that stuff, and got involved in service work and became a service junkie, and didn't have no time for meetings, didn't have no time to do step work, didn't have no time for anything. And then wonder why I'm getting short with people and cussing people out at work, and just got fired from my second job, thank God, because I didn't have no time for me. And now I've got time, and I'm getting my serenity back, and my higher power got me at the second job to get caught up in my bills, and now it's my unmanageability, that's messed up. And all I have to do is slow down and do my step work, and every time I start doing that, I get centered again. I keep wanting to say this topic is on complacency, because that's where I'm at. I'll be here. I don't know. I wear my NA ring on my wedding finger because I'm married to this program. And an addict recommitted the other day, and I guess I need to recommit because I haven't been doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then if I keep doing the basics, everything's fine. I I don't want to have a whole bunch of years and mess up. I used a few years ago because I had 2.5 years clean and I didn't want to have 10 years clean and get high, so I had to get high then. And then I beat myself up thinking, well, this is what I should have every time I get a birthday. I should have this many years. And it's not like that today. I'm appreciative of what I did, but I like what I have and I don't want to lose it for nothing. That's all. Thanks.
My name's Jeff. I'm an addict.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Bonnie and Jean and the others that came up. I know when I first saw the topic today, it was like, I'm an H&I kind of guy. That's right where I went, carrying the message, and it was good to hear, remind myself that there's many ways that if we're not carrying the message, we're carrying a message. And Gene, with that flipping off people and road rage, that was me totally, and it brought back a bad memory because the last person I flipped off was before I got in the program, and I pulled alongside this guy, and it was my ex-wife's Uncle Johnny. I was still married at the time, and it was like, you know, just reminded me there's one more person on a men's list there that he knew it was me too, and I just kind of Tracy, thank you for the H&I plug too, because I don't know of any H&I subcommittee in the region that doesn't have room for a couple more people on the subcommittee. And sometimes it sounds like I'm preaching about it, so I back off, and I tend now to go one-on-one with people when I hear somebody in a meeting that I think is carrying a good message, and walk up to them afterwards and invite them to a subcommittee meeting. I got my first basic text in a treatment center, and when I had 6 months clean, I didn't think I had much of a message. And I hear that a lot, you know, what message do I have? But there's somebody somewhere with no clean time, and they might believe that you could stay clean for 6 months. I know when I first got clean, I didn't, people with multiple years, you weren't like me, because I can't do that. I can't stay clean for years, but I'll give it a shot for a month, you know, get out of the treatment center. And something happened, and I found out that any addict can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. And that's thanks to this program. Thanks to things like Camp Mac. I hope I never lose the passion when I drive through the gates, but you know, I don't know what's in store for me down the road. But that passion was building with me for the last, you know, month. I knew when I was coming, and it's like counting down the days. When people that know me in meetings, they say, "Oh." If there's no other after comments, we could close with a circle. And thanks again.
Cheers, Jeff. Thanks, Jeff.